Hi, in this video we're going to look at a common mind habit or pattern that could be causing you stress, could be wasting a lot of energy. There are quite a few of these mind habits and patterns that are very normal to human beings, but if your system has been stressed over a long period of time, these are going to be more likely to occur internally, and they're also going to drive more and more stress, and we'll look at the way that they do that in a moment. So this first pattern, I'll be looking at other patterns like this, other mind habits in further videos, but this first one we're going to talk about, this is one that I call the 4 R's. Yeah, the 4 R's. So if you imagine a clock face, yeah, and in the position of 12, 3, 6 and 9, there's an R in each one of those positions. And with this mind habit, we move through each of these R's in the process, and I'll describe it to you now. So the easiest way I can describe this is if we use an example. Let's just say you're driving to work, you're on your way to work in the car, and someone pulls out in front of you, yeah, and you have a really close miss. Yeah, they pull out in front of you, you slam your brakes on, you come really close to hitting the car, you get this huge stress response. Yeah, your system is flooded with adrenaline and cortisol, your heart rate increases, your breathing increases. There's no actual collision, but it's a real stressor, it's a real shock to the system. Yeah, so that first R in that process, the first R, we react. Yeah, we find ourselves reacting. Maybe you feel very angry towards the driver of the other car. Maybe you feel really scared or fearful or anxious. So we react, that's the first R. And then our system kind of mops up all of that chemistry, calm ourselves down. Maybe we've made it to work. You know, we feel a little calmer in the system, and we find ourselves moving to the next R. Yeah, and that next R is we start to replay the situation, replay the event in our mind, you know, filling it out with lots of detail about what happened, what could have happened, and how we felt about the situation. Then we move to the third R, where we start to rehearse the story. Yeah, we start to rehearse the story. Yeah, he pulled out, he wasn't looking where he was going. You know, I slammed my brakes on, we nearly had a crash, this could have happened, that could have happened. And we're rehearsing the story in order to get to R number 4, which is where R number 4 stands for recite. Yeah, so then we find ourselves reciting the story either back to ourselves internally or additionally to other people. Maybe we come across, you know, different co-workers throughout the day, and each time we come across someone, we'll recite our story. Oh, you'll never guess what happened on the way to work today. You know, and we recite that story, we fill in all of the detail, and we find ourselves getting to the first R again, where we're reacting again. Emotionally, we're feeling all of those same feelings and emotions again. And maybe we do that a number of times throughout the day, each time we come across someone new. Yeah, we might even get home in the evening and recite the story to our partner. You might be wondering, well, what does that have to do with my stress levels? Well, as I said, if your system has been stressed for a period of time, there's a good chance that you're living in survival mode. Yeah, this low-level stress response all of the time. And if you are in survival mode, one of the side effects of that is subconsciously our system realizes we're in a low-level fight or flight response. And what that will do is that will make us more vigilant. Yeah, so we're on the lookout for danger a lot of the time. So if we've been under stress for a long period of time, we're more likely to have these stressful types of thoughts. And those stressful types of thoughts, each time we replay them internally, and this process I'm describing to you, the 4 R's, this is just one of many, many mind habits that we've identified. And each time we're running one of those internal mind habits, What a lot of people don't realize is there's a part of our brain, the midbrain or the limbic system, or the emotional center. That part of our brain is very, very basic. The science shows us it hasn't changed much in thousands of years. And that part of the brain doesn't actually recognize the difference between a vividly imagined scene, something we're imagining, and reality. So just think about that for a moment. That part of your brain that controls the stress response doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. So each time we're having one of these stressful thoughts, the system is reacting in exactly the same way as if it's happening in real time, out there externally. So again, we'll be producing more adrenaline, more cortisol, holding the system, maintaining that low-level stress response. This is a perfect example of, as I said, if you've been under stress for a long period of time, these things are more likely to happen. These internal patterns are more likely to occur more often. And this is an example of where a symptom of stress starts to drive more stress and locks us into this destructive cycle. It's like a training for the brain. It's like we've conditioned the brain to remain in survival mode in this low-level stress response. You might well have heard of the term neural plasticity. This is the ability that the brain has to adapt and change depending on how we're using it. So if we've been under stress for a very long period of time and it's been left unchecked and it's gradually increased over time, you can imagine almost like a pressure gauge. The needle is up near the red a lot of the time, and we're having more of these stressful thoughts. We feel more emotionally susceptible or more sensitive. Each time we're running one of these thoughts, we're feeding into that cycle, and we're maintaining that stress response, but also through that neural plasticity, we're strengthening all of these neural pathways that are connected to those types of thoughts. So you can see how I describe this as a self-fueling cycle, where the symptoms of stress start to cause more and more stress and lock us into that destructive cycle. So if you're taking part in the program, we look at these mind habits in module 2 and module 3. But for anyone else, the first stage, in the program, we look at some very dynamic tools that we can use to start to become aware of these thoughts and change them moment by moment. We learn some very powerful tools to do that. And within psychology terms, this is referred to as metacognition. The ability that we have to become aware of our thoughts and become mindful of our thoughts and become the observer of our thoughts and change them moment by moment. And that has a really powerful effect on our stress levels, and it's a way of retraining the brain into a much healthier, much more stable state. But as I said, the first stage is awareness. So maybe just start to become aware. If you do recognize that pattern or anything similar, maybe start to become aware of those internal thoughts. And as you do, you have the option to stop in that moment, and become mindful in that moment. Maybe take a breath, focus on your surroundings, bring yourself back into the moment, and let that go. Let that go in the moment and break that cycle, or start to break that cycle. So hopefully you found that helpful. As I said, I'm going to be making more videos where we look at more of these mind habits that we can start to address in order to dial down our stress levels and calm the emotions and shift the internal chemistry in a positive way. Hopefully you found that information interesting or helpful in some way. If you did, I'd just like you to know that this is a very small part of a much bigger picture. So if you find yourself overstressing, overthinking, and feeling overwhelmed, I'm going to leave a link to this video here where I describe the achiever's trap. And this is the #1 thing that I see keeping people stuck.